When you see this, what do you think? McDonald's, obviously. But what about this? It could just be a night sky, but it also could be Polaris, United's reinvented and reimagined long-haul business class. Back in 2016, United's premium product was inconsistent and laughably bad. They were flying trans-Pacific flights with 8 abreast business class, which many likened to a college dormitory.
United dug itself a bit of a hole competitively.
Yeah, I'll say. And the whole Dr. Dow incident certainly did not help the airline's reputation. So, under pressure from investors and frequent flyers alike, United's CEO made some changes. In addition to pushing a people-first mentality, he also decided to go all in on a new premium product.
Listen, it's the first big product transformation we've announced in over a decade.
And initially, the product was quite successful.
His impression when coming on board was incredible.
But service was trimmed considerably during COVID, and some have suggested that flying Polaris isn't the experience it once was. So today, we're going to put Polaris to the test on a 12-hour overnight flight from Tel Aviv, Israel to Chicago, Illinois, and find out once and for all if this thing is still the revolutionary product that was promised by our friend Oscar back in 2016. Come along as we explore Ben Gurion Airport, United's 787-8 Dreamliner, the 7th ever delivered to United, and of course, the acclaimed Polaris Lounge in Chicago. Let's do this. Welcome to Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion Airport. We're arriving in good spirits, but without a clean bill of health. And I'm not talking about COVID or a communicable illness. I'm talking about this. In an unfortunate turn of events, I broke my thumb on my first day in Israel, and the Tel Aviv ER docs decided I needed this massive plaster cast, which was cumbersome to be sure, but it could have been a lot worse. I'm really glad it wasn't my legs, and we still had an awesome trip with plenty of physical activity. But when it came back to getting my you-know-what back to the US, schlepping around my massive backpack and suitcase with this thing, I was moderately worried, but more on that later. United flies out of Terminal 3 at Tel Aviv, which is the main terminal and home of all international operations. It's around 9:30 p.m. and our flight, United 141, is scheduled to depart at 12:50 a.m., giving us about 3 hours to clear what I heard is pretty strict security, and also check out the lounge before the flight. Security was indeed thorough. I was interviewed before being allowed into the check-in desk area, and when I dropped my bag, I was asked for documentation on my medical ailment, as you're not allowed to fly within 48 hours of being fitted with the plaster cast. The actual security screening took another 30-ish minutes, even in the priority lane, and the regular lane was at least twice the size, so I'd definitely factor that in if you're flying out of Ben Gurion during the evening rush hour.
Security screening is certainly intense. You know, I was expecting to be pulled into a private room for an interview, but before you drop your bags, you're asked what were you in Israel for? Who were you traveling with? Where are you going to? What's your final destination? Who packed your bags? Have you kept track of your bags since you packed it? I was asked what temple I go to in the States. And so they're very thorough, and I think they're well trained to sort of detect any sort of lies or monkey business going on.
After clearing security, you go through this walkway that feels like a blend of ancient and modern, with the stone walls on one side and a huge glass window on the other. It's now 10:15 p.m. and we're about to enter the main rotunda from which all the concourses radiate. There are 4 concourses, B, C, D, and E. And we'll be departing from the B concourse this evening. But we've got a little bit of time to kill, so let's check out the Dan Lounge. Dan Hotels, which is a luxury hotel chain in Israel, operates 3 lounges at Tel Aviv, and they're pretty much the only game in town outside of the El Al King David Lounge. United business class passengers get access to all the Dan Lounges, and they're all pretty similar in terms of size and amenities, although I was advised that the Dan Lounge Concourse E has more stringent access requirements, so it'd probably be less crowded. So that's where we headed. Good evening. Hello. How are you? I'm okay. It's a lot better than it looks. In Israel, yes. The first day. Okay, thank you so much. Have a good night. First impressions were solid. As you heard, the lounge staff noticed my ailment and offered to help in any way they could, which was much appreciated. Now, the space itself isn't very large, but it seems modern and clean with a variety of seating options. There are 2 main amenity stations, if you will. One contains this espresso machine, as well as some cookies and still and sparkling water. And the other is where you'll find the bulk of the food options. I went for some veggies, pickled herring, feta tuna salad, and some olives. If you're looking for any cuisine that's remotely Western, boring, you'll probably be out of luck. They did have a decent selection of cookies and pastries, though.
We got gluten-free matzah. How clutch is that? Only in Israel. So we're sitting in the Dan Lounge here in Concourse E. What time is it? 10:30, 10:45. So I'm looking at a Wizz Air A320 and then an El Al 787 in the distance. But pretty good views, pretty small lounge, pretty modest lounge, but it'll do the trick.
No, it's not your fault.
Thank you. Have a great night. At that point, it was 10:50 p.m., so we had another hour and 10 minutes to kill until boarding, with zero plan or a specific agenda besides getting some steps in and taking in the sights and sounds of Ben Gurion Airport. This has to be one of the most comprehensive and simultaneously random duty-free selections I've ever seen. So if you're flying out of Tel Aviv and you want to save some dough on everything from home appliances to unicorn Fruit Loops, show up a little early and go to town. I did not buy anything, but it was really good people watching. I popped open the Amex app to see if there were any other Priority Pass lounges I could visit. And surprise, surprise, all we got are Dan lounges. So I figured I'd check out the one in Concourse B for comparison purposes. From the outside, it pretty much looks like a carbon copy of the other one. Hello, how are you? Good. Thank you so much. Yeah, this one certainly feels a little more dated on the inside. Plus, it was more crowded and felt a little less exclusive. Food and drinking selection was almost identical to the Concourse E Dan Lounge, but a little more picked over given the increased traffic. Now, this is not something I've ever seen in a lounge before, but I love the attempt to encourage active sitting. But walking is better than active sitting, and since this lounge didn't have anything special to offer, I decided to get on with my evening. Just got to the gate area and losing steam quick. We only got 1 hour of sleep last night. Woke up at 3:30 a.m. to go to Masada in the Dead Sea this morning, which is about like an hour and a half from Jerusalem. And then we went 2.5 hours from the Dead Sea back to Tel Aviv, and it was just a thoroughly draining day. So we're at gate B7. I think I'm just gonna post up here and throw on some Netflix or something completely vegetative. So I just ended up staring at a wall for around 20 minutes until boarding. But our energy was somewhat restored as the excitement was building for our first Polaris adventure. Boarding began on time at around midnight, but this was a very strange boarding process as no verbal announcements were made. People just sort of queued up at random when they got notifications through the United app that boarding had started. It didn't really bother me at all though, as I knew I wouldn't be fighting for overhead bin space. Turning left, we find ourselves in the larger of two Polaris business class cabins with 20 seats arranged in a 1-2-1 layout. The odd row window seats are where you want to be if you're traveling solo, as they're considerably more private. This cabin is one of the most visually appealing I've seen in a while, and the mood lighting was spot on for a red-eye flight. Waiting at the seat are a dizzying amount of amenities with an overwhelming emphasis on sleep. The bedding has Saks Fifth Avenue branding on it, so that means it's automatically good? Well, we'll find out. I'm looking forward to trying out this gel pillow thing, which I don't believe you can find on any other carrier. But we'll go into the seat and amenities in a bit. For now, I'll give our pilot the floor so we can hear about the routing for today.
11 hours and 39 minutes en route. We're expected to arrive at least 20 minutes early, likely earlier than that since we are pushing a few minutes ahead of our original schedule. We're expecting a little bit of chop as we make our great circle routing to the north. That'll happen in about 90 minutes into the flight. Then it should be mostly smooth as we cross Norway, Sweden, Iceland, Greenland, and then of course over Maine and into Chicago. If there's anything en route that we can do to make your trip a little more enjoyable, please let us know. And on behalf of our Washington and Chicago-based crew, again, welcome aboard.
Once we got to 10,000 feet, it was time to pop out the headphones, throw on a movie, and patiently wait for the meal service. I'm not gonna lie, it took every last ounce of energy to keep my eyelids open, but I absolutely was not gonna miss the food. So United allows you to pre-select your meal online if you so choose. I pre-selected the herb-crusted lamb loins. I certainly wasn't going with the vegetarian option. The chicken parm sounded kind of risky with all the cheese, and I certainly don't trust United with fish on a plane. Service started with an absolutely piping hot towel. I then proceeded to pop out the tray table, and Joe the purser came by to take my drink order.
Can I get you anything to drink?
Thanks, Robert. Can I just do still water, please?
My still water came out in a matter of seconds, and right behind that was a little ramekin of warm nuts. I could already tell Joe wasn't messing around, in a good way. Unfortunately, the nuts were a swing and a miss. They tasted quite stale, but were adequately salty, so I just devoured them anyways. Joe asked me if I wanted more, and I politely declined, so he snagged the ramekin and came out with the appetizer and main course in short order. The appetizer was a smoked Nordic salmon with beetroot and horseradish tartare, and it was fantastic.
Salmon's good. It's a little bit on the chilly side, but seems fresh.
The same goes with the salad, which is a spicy soba and buckwheat noodle concoction of some sort. I'm really glad to see United went with something a little more interesting and refreshing than their typical mixed green salad. The main was, of course, the herb-crusted lamb loin. It was above average, better than I was expecting for United. Not a ton of protein, but a fair amount of veggies and adequately salted, which I did appreciate. Once I was through, Joe came by and inquired about my appetite for dessert.
Would you like dessert?
Yeah, can I do the ice cream, please?
Sure. And then I have strawberries, caramel, chocolate, whipped cream, and almonds.
Oh, geez, can I just do, I guess, all of them?
Anything else to drink?
Yeah, just more water, please. Thank you.
Joe, what an absolute homie. He was back within, I kid you not, probably 10 seconds with the sundae. Now, you guys know my stance on the sundae. It's arguably the most classic American dessert on a plane, but a lot of airlines, Americans, screw it up by freezing the ice cream to absolute zero, and then it's hard as a rock. But this one towed the line brilliantly between traditional ice cream and soft serve. Absolutely tremendous. What a perfect way to cap off the meal service. After that, it was time to head to one of the 2 business class lavatories for a quick toothbrushing session. United's amenity kit has everything you'll need to accomplish that task. But first,
We got some face mist, we got some fabric refresher, more face mist.
when I got back to 1 Alpha, I put the seat into bed mode, threw on the eye shades, and passed out. After about 3 hours of solid shut-eye, I got up to peruse the mid-flight snack selection.
Probably would do the soup if it wasn't an overnight flight. I'm probably just gonna wait for breakfast at this point.
I don't blame you. Yeah, we're almost there now.
Right, yeah, making good progress, looks like.
Rise and shine. Oh wait, wrong flight. It is very much still dark outside.
Now, in my mind, the biggest downside of these overnight flights is the fact that it's completely dark outside and you don't really have any outdoor views whatsoever. So I literally can't even see the engine. And I think they had thank you.
Do you want more Sprite?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thanks. I think they had the runway lights at Tel Aviv dimmed. So it was, I didn't even know we were turning onto the runway. It's gonna be quite interesting to get our first glimpse of sunlight tomorrow morning in Chicago. Hopefully that'll be in the Polaris Lounge. But yeah, I've really enjoyed this experience so far. I'll try to recap more of it in the lounge tomorrow morning.
Alright, time for some breakfast. And need I remind you, this is before 4 a.m. local time, so my body has to be so confused right now.
Did you care to have breakfast?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Would you like the chicken sausage with eggs or the lemon ricotta pancakes? Anything to drink?
Just a little more sparkling water. Thank you.
And breakfast is served. We got 2 egg patties, chicken sausage, and some sort of tomato sauce, some yogurt with a fruit, and a croissant. Aside from the fact it's 4 a.m., this is a pretty ideal protein-heavy breakfast in my opinion. During breakfast, I decided to take the IFE for a spin. I landed on this Mark Wahlberg throwback. The system is pretty robust and houses 350 plus movies by my count, so you're unlikely to be bored even on 12 plus hour flights. And hey, if that's not enough, United still produces an in-flight magazine called Hemispheres. This is where you'll find all the hard-hitting articles like this one on the new A319 interiors. Plus, if all else fails, there's always the safety card. Now, the last order of business is taking the Wi-Fi for a test drive. United offers free messaging, but if you want to browse the web and send emails, you're going to have to pony up at least $4.99 or 500 miles. For the full flight, they were charging $21.99 or 2,200 miles. I tried the hour package given how close we were to Chicago, but it was borderline unusable. So I decided to take a quick tour of the 194-seat economy cabin. By the time I got back, the flight attendants were gearing up for their pre-landing cabin checks. Our approach to O'Hare was pretty efficient and stress-free. We basically had the place to ourselves this morning, given how early it was.
I was expecting any delays because of the early hour. Not much traffic out here tonight, so it should be straight to the runway to land.
Our winds were out of the east, so we'd be landing on runway 9 center. I'll spare you from the approach footage, as it was literally pitch black outside. But here's the landing. Longtime viewers will know we always rate the landings, day or night, rain or shine. Obviously, it's hard to draw conclusions from just sound alone, but I'd say the United pilots did a pretty good job for being at the end of a 13-hour shift.
Good morning, Bravo. The local time is 4:43 in the morning. We'll be passing for the next few minutes, so please remain seated with your seatbelts securely fastened until the seatbelt sign is turned off and the aircraft is parked.
Thanks again for the awesome flight. Safe trip back to Minneapolis. Thanks again.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Be careful now.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Have a good day.
No problem.
So, welcome to Chicago O'Hare. We arrived in the International Terminal 5, but had to transfer to Terminal 1 for our connecting flight to Cleveland. After clearing security in Terminal 1, it was around 5:45 a.m., but the Polaris Lounge didn't open until 6, so we stopped by the United Club right next door. I'll save the full review for another day, but I thought it was excellent for a US non-business class lounge. Now, it's time for the main event. This is where it's at. This is the main event. Let's see what the hype is all about. This lounge is definitely a step above your average business class lounge, and it was the perfect escape from the chaos of the terminal. At this early hour, I basically had the place to myself, so it felt even more surreal. But keeping in character with the calm, serene atmosphere, I'll step back and let the videos do the talking. Now, probably worth mentioning, I didn't have a whole lot of time in here, so I hastily wolfed down some yogurt, berries, eggs, and granola, and then moved on to the espresso. The lounge staff were cleaning the espresso machine when I stopped by.
Okay, yeah, no worries. Take your time. Thank you.
They were done in literally 5 minutes and very graciously made it for me and hand-delivered it to my seat. United uses Illy beans, which I consider to be one of the best among North American carriers, and this espresso sure didn't disappoint. I tried to savor it as best I could with the 5 minutes I had remaining in the lounge. Then I was on my way to the B gates where my flight to Cleveland was due to depart. At this point, I was certainly sad the Polaris experience was coming to an end, but extremely grateful for what was a pretty stress-free transcontinental trip. United Steed is still competitive in my opinion, and the service was excellent. It wasn't overly professional or polished, but it was friendly and attentive. Now, there are clearly some aspects of the experience United has de-emphasized. The food was so-so, and some of the advertised amenities were unavailable. For example, United claims they offer pajamas upon request to Polaris passengers on flights over 12 hours, but those PJs apparently weren't loaded on the flight. Not a huge deal, but feels a little bit misleading to advertise something and then not deliver on it. So, is Polaris the same as it was pre-COVID? Probably not, but it was a comfortable and pleasant way to travel, and to be quite honest, I'm not sure I could have survived a 12-hour flight in economy with that big cast on. Luckily, it wasn't too bad of a fracture, and I had the thing removed soon after I got back to the States. I know there are ultimately a lot worse of ailments out there, so looking back, I think I was pretty fortunate. Well, as we're getting to the gate for our Cleveland flight, I'll sign off for now. As always, really do appreciate you coming along with me today. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and hope to see you in the next one.